Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the sandals of a Roman meretrix, a sex worker in the empire's underbelly, where lust and survival collide under flickering oil lamps. You wake before dawn in the Subura, Rome's most notorious district, where the air smells like yesterday's fish sauce and tomorrow's regrets. The walls are thin, the neighbors loud, and the mattress. Let's just say you've slept on worse, but not by much. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. I love imagining you all tucked in while we unravel history's juiciest secrets. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day starts with the sound of sandals slapping against wet cobblestones, water carriers making their rounds, because Rome's aqueducts don't magically fill your basin. You splash your face, wincing at the cold. No time for vanity. Your hair's pinned up quick, a dab of rose oil on the wrists to mask, well, everything else. The Subura never sleeps, but it does groan. Drunkards still stagger from last night's popina, that's a dive bar, but with more vomit. A stray dog eyes your breakfast, a hunk of stale bread dipped in watered wine. You toss him a crust. Maybe it's luck. Maybe it's guilt. Mainstream fact: prostitution was legal in Rome, taxed and regulated, like modern food trucks, but with fewer health inspections. Quirky tidbit: some workers wore fascina, tiny phallic amulets, for protection. Because nothing says back off evil spirits like a mini penis necklace. Open debate. Historians still argue whether the famous Lupina of Pompeii was a high-end brothel or just a really enthusiastic Airbnb. Outside, the city yawns awake. A fishmonger shouts prices. A priest of Isis chants. And you're scanning the street for three things. Regulars, like Gaius, the wool merchant who always pays extra for you to laugh at his jokes, even the one about the Vestal Virgin and the donkey, especially that one. New faces, maybe a fresh-off-the-boat trader from Carthage, wide-eyed and loose with his denarii. Trouble, soldiers on leave, politicians' bodyguards, anyone who smells like unpaid debts. You adjust your stola, yellow today, the universal open for business sign. Red means occupied, green means specialty services, we'll get to those later. A passing matron sneers. You smirk back. Her husband's probably your 10 a.m. The economics of desire hit you before the first customer even knocks, because in Rome, sex work isn't just about pleasure. It's a transaction, as carefully calculated as a senator's bribe. The price list is literally carved into the wall near the brothel entrance, like some ancient Yelp review system. A basic quick visit runs you 2 arses. Yes, that's the actual coin name, and no, the irony wasn't lost on Romans. Fancier services. Those require negotiation, and maybe a signed contract if you're dealing with a particularly paranoid bureaucrat who wants everything in triplicate. You lean against the doorway, watching the street traffic. A slave scurries past with a basket of figs, a merchant argues with a tax collector, and a group of young nobles stumble out of an all-night gambling den, their tunics disheveled and their purses suspiciously light. Perfect. Mainstream fact: brothels were often located near bathhouses and taverns, Rome's version of a one-stop shop for sin. Quirky tidbit: some high-end workers accepted payment in perfume or exotic pets, because nothing says I had a great time like gifting someone a parrot. Open debate. Historians still argue whether specialty services included things like philosophy debates between rounds, because nothing kills the mood like stoicism. Your first client of the day is a middle-aged spice trader from Alexandria. He smells like cinnamon and bad decisions. He points at the price list, then at you, then at a room upstairs. No words needed. Business is business. As you climb the creaky stairs, you overhear 2 other workers arguing over a regular, a wealthy but very particular client who insists on being called Jupiter's favorite during sessions. One girl's fed up with his theatrics. The other's willing to play along, for double the pay. The room is small, lit by a single oil lamp. The bed is firm, a generous description. The spice trader fumbles with his coin purse. drops a few denarii on the side table, and, wait. You squint. That's more than the going rate. He grins. I heard you do something special. Ah, that. You sigh, reach under the bed, and pull out a small lyre. Fine. But I only play one love song. The lyre's last note fades into the sticky air as your Alexandrian client wipes away an overly dramatic tear. That, he declares, was worth every extra cestus. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. Musical accompaniment isn't in your usual job description, but in Rome, versatility pays the rent. As he leaves, still sniffling, you pocket the coins and brace for the next visitor. Downstairs, the brothel's Leno, the pimp/manager, is arguing with a wine merchant about overdue deliveries. Typical. The real soundtrack of the Subura isn't moans of pleasure. It's the clink of coins and the grumble of empty stomachs. A crash echoes from the street. You peer out just in time to see a group of vigils, Rome's notoriously corrupt fire watchmen, confiscating a vendor's entire stock of dates. One winks at you, mouth full of stolen fruit. You flip him a discreet middle finger, a gesture as old as time itself, and duck back inside before he can investigate your workplace. Mainstream fact: Roman sex workers paid taxes, and the state even issued them licenses, because nothing says bureaucracy like regulating vice. Quirky tidbit: some high-end meretrices were known to wear gold dust in their hair, a shimmering advertisement of their elite clientele. Open debate. Historians still argue whether the famed she-wolf of the capital was a metaphor for Rome's founding, or just a really popular brothel madam. Your next appointment arrives fashionably late, a scribe with ink-stained fingers and the nervous energy of a man who spent too long transcribing Senate speeches. He doesn't want sex, he wants conversation. This, too, is common. For some, the brothel isn't about physical release but about being heard. And for others, it's about pretending the meretrix is their estranged wife. Rome had issues. As he rambles about Cicero's latest hypocrisy, your mind drifts to the graffiti scrawled outside, a crude drawing of a man with a donkey's head, captioned "Marcus was here, and so was his mistress." You stifle a laugh. The scribe mistakes it for encouragement and launches into a rant about tax reform. 3 hours later, he leaves, emotionally unburdened. You collapse onto a stool, exhausted. Who knew politics could be more draining than sex? Then the door slams open. A very drunk gladiator lurches in, smelling like cheap wine and cheaper decisions. He grins. "I heard you do poetry." You groan and reach for the lyre again. The drunk gladiator's poetic demands dissolve into slurred mumbling halfway through your third verse about rosy-fingered dawn, which is just as well, since you were improvising wildly. His head hits the pillow with a thud, and within seconds, he's snoring like a bear in hibernation. You pry the lyre from his limp grip and pocket the coins he probably meant to pay you. Stepping over his discarded belt, seriously, how do gladiators function in daily life? You head downstairs where the afternoon crowd is thickening. The Leno is now deep in negotiations with a Syrian merchant who keeps gesturing to a veiled companion. The haggling isn't about price, it's about duration. Some clients prefer to rent by the hour, others by the week. There are even records of year-long contracts, though whether these were romantic commitments or just really thorough business arrangements, historians still argue. Mainstream fact: Roman law distinguished between meretrices, independent workers, and lupi, brothel workers, with vastly different social standings. Quirky tidbit: some elite prostitutes served as fashion trendsetters, their hairstyles copied by noblewomen within weeks. Open debate: whether the famous Bikini Girls mosaic from Piazza Armerina depicts actual athletes or just very sporty courtesans. Your next client is neither drunk nor poetic, just painfully young. His toga's hem is still ragged from coming-of-age ceremonies, his cheeks flushed with equal parts nerves and pomade. You recognize the type immediately. Rich kid on his first unsupervised trip to the city. "Are you?" he begins, then swallows hard. You take pity. "Yes. But first, honey water." You press a cup into his shaking hands. "Drink. Breathe. Then we'll talk about what you actually want." What he wants, it turns out, is reassurance. The poor boy's been fed so many horror stories by his tutor that his half-convinced sex will turn him into a goat. You spend the next hour debunking myths. No, your womb doesn't wander. No, kissing won't steal his soul, and sending him home with a pouch of safe sex herbs and considerably more confidence. As sunset paints the Subura in gold and grime, you finally get your first real break, until a familiar silhouette darkens the doorway. Senator Drusus. Again. I brought my own lyre this time, he announces, looking unbearably pleased with himself. You sigh and reach for the wine jug. It's going to be a long night. The senator's lyre playing is, frankly, atrocious, like a cat being strangled by a particularly tone-deaf donkey. But you paste on your best enraptured audience expression because A, he tips well, and B, he's connected enough to have your taxes adjusted if offended. Between plucked wrong notes, he monologues about his latest political triumph, some dull trade disputes settled in his favor. You nod along, mentally calculating how much longer until you can reasonably fake a sudden religious obligation to escape. Then the music stops. He leans in, wine on his breath. Tell me, my muse, what do the people really say about me in the streets? Ah, this is why he keeps coming back, not for the sex, which he's too inebriated to manage half the time, but for intel. In Rome, brothels are better than the Senate floor for unfiltered gossip. You weigh your words carefully, truth enough to be valuable, but not enough to get anyone killed. They say your speech about the grain dole moved even the pigeons to tears. You lie smoothly. He preens. The pigeons, you don't add, were probably just after breadcrumbs. Mainstream fact. Roman politicians often used brothels as informal polling stations, testing public opinion through workers' reports. Quirky tidbit, some high-end courtesans developed specialties. One was famous for reenacting Jupiter's seduction of Leda, complete with improvised swan noises. Open debate, whether the Lex Scantinia, Rome's anti-sodomy law, was actually enforced or just used selectively to blackmail political rivals. The senator leaves just before curfew, his ego and purse lighter. You're about to bolt the door when a shadow detaches from the alleyway. I don't do midnight appointments, you snap, hand drifting toward the dagger under your pillow. The figure steps into the lamplight, a woman in a travel-stained cloak. Not a client. A colleague. They're raiding the Lupina, she hisses. Praetorians. Looking for undocumented workers. You freeze. Your papers are mostly in order, but mostly won't cut it if the guards want bribes. Within minutes, you've doused the lamps, hidden your savings in a false amphora, and slipped out the back, just as torchlight floods the street. The night air is thick with the scent of panic and piss. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere closer, a child wails. You melt into the darkness, because in Rome, even desire has a curfew. The raid forces you into an impromptu night of professional tourism, crashing at a fellow worker's apartment above a thermopolium where the smell of simmering lentils almost covers the stench of the communal latrine next door. Your host, a Gaulish woman named Vestilia, pours you wine so acidic it makes your eyes water. Praetorians, she spits. They're worse than tax collectors. At least the taxman lets you keep your dignity. As dawn bleeds through the shutters, the all clear comes via a street urchin paid in figures. The coast is clear, for now. You pick your way home past shattered amphorae and the occasional unconscious guardsman, courtesy of a particularly vengeful wine cellar. Your room is untouched, though someone's definitely riffled through your spare tunics. The only thing stolen. Your good hairpin. Barbarians. Mainstream fact. Police raids on brothels were less about morality and more about extraction, fines, bribes, and the occasional recruitment of unregistered workers. Quirky tidbit. Some workers kept ledgers of clients' preferences, coded in fruit metaphors. Fig lover equals slaps, pomegranate enthusiast equals cries afterward. Open debate, whether the infamous Widow of Ephesus tale was satire about client loyalty, or just a really dark Yelp review. By midday, business resumes as if nothing happened. Your first post-raid client is a ship's captain with salt-cracked lips and a fascinating tattoo of what might be Poseidon or possibly a very angry squid. He pays up front in Eastern coins, always a gamble, but the silver content checks out. You're taller than I expected, he remarks, squinting. And you're balder than your reputation suggested. You volley back. He roars with laughter. This is why you tolerate him, zero pretense, zero poetry demands. As he leaves, he tosses you a small cloth bundle. Inside, saffron threads, worth more than he just paid you. For next time, he winks. You stash it with your other retirement fund treasures. A silver bracelet from a nostalgic senator, a nearly intact cosmetic jar from Egypt. The afternoon brings a parade of the usual suspects. A baker who insists on bringing his own hygienic, flour-dusted blanket. A scribe who swears he's writing a historical treatise and not taking notes. A Vestal virgin in very unconvincing male disguise. You pretend not to recognize her. Just as you're considering closing early, he appears, the one client you never turn away. Hello, father. Your father doesn't visit often, maybe twice a year, always unannounced, always smelling of the same cheap olive oil he's sold at the market for decades. He shifts awkwardly in the doorway, clutching a basket of garum, that fish sauce abomination Romans love, like it's a peace offering. You look thin, he grunts, shoving the basket at you. And you look guilty, you counter, but step aside to let him in. The visit follows its usual script. He asks about your health, you ask about your siblings, and both of you pointedly don't discuss how you wound up in this particular profession. He leaves coins on the table, for groceries, and you pretend not to notice they're triple what groceries cost. Mainstream fact. Many Roman sex workers came from familiae libertini, freed slave families with limited economic options. Quirky tidbit. Some fathers reportedly pimped their daughters while claiming it was just hospitality, a legal loophole that made Cicero blush. Open debate. Whether the Pudicitia cult statues really wept when sex workers prayed to them, or if priests just rigged the pipes. After he leaves, you stare at the garum with mixed feelings. It's terrible. It's expensive terrible. You're absolutely going to pawn it tomorrow. The evening brings a welcome distraction, a symposium gig at a wealthy merchant's house. These are your favorites: playing music, making small talk, and not having to sleep with anyone unless the pay is exceptional. The party's in full swing when you arrive. A Greek philosopher is drunkenly debating whether oysters count as meat. Two senators are arm wrestling over a bet involving a dancing bear, and the host's wife keeps accidentally dropping her shawl near the youngest guest. You're halfway through a surprisingly decent love ballad when a hush falls over the room. She has arrived. Claudia Metella, the most notorious meretrix in Rome, rumored to have turned down Mark Antony because his table manners offended her. Her gown is actual silk from Circe, her hair coiled into an architectural masterpiece, and her gaze, when it lands on you, is razor sharp. Play the whore's lament, she commands, dropping a gold aureus into your lap. The room holds its breath. That song's dangerous, a ballad about a worker swindling a senator. You pluck the first note with a grin. Let's see who flinches first. The last chord of the whore's lament hangs in the air like a challenge. For a heartbeat, the symposium is utterly still. Then the Greek philosopher slams his cup down with a brava, and the spell breaks. Laughter erupts, wine spills, and two junior senators start a heated debate about whether the song's senator was meant to be Pompey. It was. Claudia Metella's lips curve in approval as she drops another aureus into your lap. Encore, she murmurs, but her eyes flick toward the doorway, where the host's face has gone the color of week-old garum. Smart woman. You switch to a much safer tune about nymphs and rivers. Mainstream fact. Symposia were prime networking opportunities for high-end courtesans, where a well-placed whisper could sway political fortunes. Quirky tidbit. Some meretrices carried ivory tickets engraved with their names, the ancient equivalent of business cards. Open debate. Whether the Lesbia in Catullus's poems was really a nom de plume for Rome's most infamous aristocratic nymphomaniac. By midnight, you've earned enough to cover 3 months' rent, half from playing, half from discreetly passing messages between guests who definitely shouldn't be conspiring. Claudia slips you a scroll sealed with perfume wax, classy, before gliding out. You're stuffing it into your belt when a hand clamps onto your wrist. How much to spy for me? The host's breath reeks of fermented figs. You smile sweetly while prying his fingers off. How much do you have? The walk home is uneventful, if you don't count nearly tripping over a passed-out augur, still clutching his sacred chicken, or the stray dog that follows you for 2 blocks hoping you'll vomit. Back in your room, you unroll Claudia's scroll. It's not a love note. It's a shipping manifest. 3 Egyptian grain ships. 2 delayed by pirates. 1 suddenly rerouted to your landlord's private docks. Well, that explains his new gold rings. You burn the scroll. Some games are worth playing. Others get people fed to eels. As dawn approaches, a familiar scratch comes at your door. Not a client. Not a threat. Just Felix, the one-eyed alley cat who occasionally deigns to visit. He deposits a dead mouse on your pillow, his idea of rent, before curling up on your feet. You leave the mouse where it is. In Rome, everyone pays their way. The dead mouse is still on your pillow when you wake, now slightly flattened from where Felix slept on it like some kind of grotesque trophy. You flick it out the window with a sigh. Free breakfast for the street sparrows, maybe. Today's agenda: avoiding the fallout from last night's symposium. That shipping manifest wasn't meant for your eyes, and in Rome, accidental knowledge has a habit of turning fatal. You're halfway through braiding your hair, tight enough to stay up all night, loose enough to pull free if grabbed, when a commotion erupts outside. Not again. But it's not the Praetorians, just a very public breakup. One of the lupi from the brothel next door is hurling a man's belongings into the street while screaming creative insults. A sandal hits a passing mule driver. A wax tablet splats against the wall near your door, revealing a terrible love poem. Your eyes shine brighter than a well-scrubbed chamber pot. You wince. No wonder she's dumping him. Mainstream fact: Roman sex workers could sue clients for unpaid fees, and sometimes won if the judge wasn't a former client himself. Quirky tidbit: the tintinnabulum, wind chimes shaped like phalluses, were hung outside brothels for good luck and very clear advertising. Open debate: whether the prostitutes garland found in Pompeii was a real award for popularity or just a drunk tourist souvenir. You're about to slip out the back when he blocks your path, the landlord's thug, Dentatus, named for his lack of teeth, not his abundance. His grin is a horror show. Boss wants a word. The word, delivered in your landlord's mildew-scented office, is more of a threat wrapped in bureaucratic jargon: rent adjustments, new safety inspections, loyalty bonuses. The subtext: keep quiet about the grain ships, or your rent triples. You agree enthusiastically while mentally recalculating your escape fund. Maybe 3 more months of work. Maybe 2, if you skip meals. The afternoon passes in a blur of unremarkable clients: a weaver with calloused hands, a butcher who insists on describing his day's work in detail, and a very lost tourist from Britannia who keeps asking if you do that thing with the ducks. You don't ask. At dusk, a surprise. Claudia Metella's personal slave delivers a package. Inside, a blue stola, the color of discretion, and a note: wear this tomorrow. Be at the Temple of Isis by noon. No explanation. No payment mentioned. You run the fabric through your fingers. Egyptian linen. Real indigo dye. This is either a lifeline, or the fanciest trap ever set. Felix, ever helpful, coughs up another mouse onto the gift. Thanks, buddy. The blue stola fits like a second skin, which is suspicious, because you definitely never gave Claudia your measurements. Either she's freakishly observant, or she's had someone spy on you bathing. In Rome, it's probably both. You adjust the silver belt, included in the package, because of course it was, and slip out before Dentatus can notice you're dressed above your tax bracket. The Temple of Isis smells like lotus incense and wet stone. Claudia waits by the altar, feeding sacred crocodiles bits of meat with gold-tipped tongs. Show off. Without looking up, she says, "There's a senator's wife who thinks her husband's mistress is a priestess here." You look the part. Ah, you're the decoy. Mainstream fact: Roman wives could divorce adulterous husbands but often needed proof, hence an entire industry of discreet investigators, i.e., professional blackmailers. Quirky tidbit: some priestesses wore crocodile dung eyeliner as a spiritual practice, and possibly the ancient world's worst contraceptive. Open debate: whether Isis cult rituals actually included sacred orgies, or if that's just male historians being wishful thinkers. The plan unfolds like a bad mime. You pretend to be a mysterious initiate purifying yourself in the inner sanctum, Reed, lounging dramatically by the pool. The senator's wife accidentally glimpses you through the curtains. Claudia gasps. Oh no. Not this priestess. She's terribly devout. The wife leaves in tears. You leave with half the fee, Claudia's cut, and a lingering fear you've been cursed by actual crocodile gods. Back in the Subura, life rolls on. A new brothel's opened across the street, the Laughing Octopus, with shockingly affordable rates and a suspiciously clean floor. You're debating whether to investigate or torch it preemptively when a familiar voice calls. You! Liar girl! It's gladiator poetry enthusiast from last week, now mostly sober and holding, oh gods, a self-composed epic about your eyes. It's terrible. It's endearing. It's 14 scrolls long. You let him read one before faking a sneezing fit. He leaves, promising to edit the metaphors. As night falls, you spot Dentatus lurking by the fountain. Time to test Claudia's gift. You stroll past him, the blue fabric shimmering. His eyes widen. He doesn't follow. Power in Rome isn't just gold or steel. It's perception. And tonight, you look expensive. The blue stola works too well. For 3 days straight, clients treat you like some highborn lady slumming it for thrills, tipping double, speaking in hushed tones, even bowing. It's hilarious until the Laughing Octopus workers start glaring at you across the street. You're considering a strategic stain to lower your perceived status when trouble arrives in a puff of rose-scented smoke. Darling, purrs Fabulous, the Subura's most flamboyant Leno, fluttering into your room like a dyspeptic peacock. We need to talk about your vibes. He gestures at your outfit with a jeweled hand. You're making the octopus girls look cheap, and frankly, their pimp is threatening to feed me to his pet weasel. You arch a brow. And this is my problem because... Mainstream fact, Roman brothel keepers, len ones, were social pariahs, even other sex workers despised them for skimming profits. Quirky tidbit. Some len ones wore phallic amulets big enough to double as clubs, for protection, naturally. Open debate. Whether the wet dream tax mentioned in satires was real or just bureaucratic satire. Fabulous huffs. Because I convinced him you're not poaching clients. That you're just eccentric. He eyes your stola. But gods, girl, tone it down or next time, I let the weasel have you. You agree, verbally, while mentally planning exactly how to wear the stola more provocatively tomorrow. The encounter leaves you restless. You ditch your evening appointments to visit the public baths, not to bathe, but to listen. The steam room is Rome's best gossip exchange. Today's hot topics. A praetor's wife caught communing with a gladiator's ghost in her bedroom, wink wink. The Egyptian grain shortage worsening, your landlord's stolen shipments, no doubt. And, oh joy, rumors of Claudia Metella cozying up to Octavian's faction. You're soaking this in when a hand grabs your wrist. Again. You're this close to stabbing someone when you recognize Lucius, the scribe from last week. His pale. Shaking. They're purging ISIS cultists, he whispers. Your name's on a list. The water suddenly feels very cold. The scribe's warning hangs in the humid air like a blade. You force a laugh, too loud, too sharp, and toss your hair. Me. A cultist. Please. I can barely remember to water my herbs. But your pulse thrums against your ribs. Lucius isn't the hysterical type. You exit the baths with deliberate calm, scanning the street for Praetorian cloaks. Nothing. Just the usual chaos, a street vendor hawking authentic Cleopatra eyeliner, its charcoal, a toothless crone reading omens in spilled lentils, and a group of very lost Germanic traders being swindled at dice. Mainstream fact. Roman authorities periodically cracked down on foreign cults, less about piety, more about controlling unregulated gatherings. Quirky tidbit. Some prostitutes pretended to be cult initiates to charge extra for mystical services. Read. Bad astrology and theatrical moaning. Open debate. Whether the ISIS purge was really about religion, or just Octavian's excuse to seize temple gold. Back home, you tear your room apart. Where would they hide a list? Under the loose floor tile? Inside Felix's mouse stash? The cat watches, unimpressed, as you upturn your only decent bowl. Then, a knock. Not the client rhythm. Not the landlord pound. Claudia's code. You open the door to her Syrian slave girl, who wordlessly hands you a fig and leaves. Inside the fruit, a scrap of papyrus. Leave the Stola. Go to the Green Dolphin docks at dawn. Ask for Bastit's tears. You burn the note. The rest of the night is a blur of strategic decisions. Pawn the silver belt, too memorable. Sew coins into your sandal straps, classic. Leave 2 mice for Felix as apology, he deserves it. As first light bleeds over the rooftops, you take one last look at your room, the cracked mirror, the lyre with its broken string, the garum still untouched where your father left it. Then you're out the door, blending into the crowd of bleary-eyed fishermen and hungover sailors. The Green Dolphin stinks of rotting fish and fresh fear. You approach a ship's captain with Octavian's insignia discreetly stitched into his tunic. Bastit's tears. You murmur. He doesn't smile. Just nods toward the gangplank. Some escapes are triumphant. This one just is. The ship's deck rolls beneath your feet like a drunk client after too much Falernian wine. You cling to the railing, silently cursing every god from Neptune to that weird little cabbage deity farmers pray to. The captain, a grizzled Sicilian with salt-crusted eyebrows, grunts at your green complexion. Puke overboard, not on my ropes. Charming. By noon, the nausea fades, replaced by gnawing uncertainty. Where exactly is this ship going? The crew mumbles in a dialect thicker than garum. The few words you catch, shoals, night sails, customs bribes, aren't reassuring. Mainstream fact. Roman merchant ships often doubled as smuggling operations. Grain, spices, people. Quirky tidbit. Sailors believed women on board angered the winds, yet somehow never blamed storms on their own incompetence. Open debate. Whether the Alexandrian lighthouse really guided ships or just lured them into tax zones. You're picking weevils out of your bread ration when a shadow blocks the sun. Claudia's slave girl, the one from the fig incident, plops down beside you. Up close, she's younger than you thought, maybe 14, with eyes that VE seen far too much. We're going to Neapolis, she says, like it's obvious. Then Puteoli. Then maybe Massilia if the Praetorians start asking about missing lyre players. She eyes your hands. You do actually play, right? Because Madam says you're her cousin now, a musician visiting relatives. You blink. Cousin. The girl rolls her eyes. Rich people have lots of cousins. Just nod and look tragic when they ask about your dead husband. The story unfolds. You're Lydia of Corinth, a widowed musician, hence the morning blue stola, aha, traveling to perform at some aristocrat's villa. The slave, Calliope, probably not her real name, will be your maid. And if anyone asks why we left Rome in a hurry. Calliope smiles sweetly. Plague scare. Everyone's using that one this season. Night falls. The ship cuts through waves like a knife through cheap cheese. You practice your grieving widow face in the moonlight. Somewhere behind you, a sailor mutters about women on ships. You consider pushing him overboard. For luck. Neapolis smells like fish, figs, and freedom, or at least the kind where no one recognizes you. The docks swarm with merchants haggling over Greek olive oil, fancier, Syrian dates, stickier, and Egyptian linen, way overpriced. Calliope drags you past them all, hissing stop gawping like a country virgin as you nearly trip over a basket of live eels. The cousin's villa turns out to be a modest but clean inn near the theatre district. Your room has actual glass in the window and no visible bedbugs. Luxury. Mainstream fact. Neapolis, modern Naples, was Rome's playground. Less politics, more theatres, baths, and discreet affairs. Quirky tidbit. Some meretrices here specialized in Greek-style romance, complete with philosophy quotes mid-seduction. Open debate. Whether the Siren's grotto really housed elite courtesans or just charged tourists to pretend it did. Calliope slaps a harp into your hands. Madam says you're performing at Julia Felix's dinner tonight. Don't embarrass her. You stare at the harp. I play lyre. Now you play harp, she says, and slams the door. The next 6 hours are a blur of blistered fingers and creative cursing. By dusk, you can almost pluck the bride's lament without causing dogs to howl. Julia Felix's villa is obscenely opulent. Frescoes of naked nymphs wink from every wall, the wine flows from silver jugs, and the floor mosaics are so detailed you hesitate to step on them. Your cousin Claudia holds court on a peacock feather couch, draped in Tyrian purple. The color alone costs more than your entire life savings. She introduces you with a wave. My talented kinswoman, recently widowed. The guests ooh sympathetically. You almost feel guilty for your imaginary dead husband. Then you spot him, a Roman official reclining near Claudia. His signet ring marks him as Octavian's faction. His gaze marks him as dangerous. Calliope pinches your elbow. Play. Now. The harp's first note rings out clear. The official's cup pauses halfway to his lips. He knows. The harp string bites into your fingers as you play, each note sharper than the last. The Roman official's stare weighs heavier than a bad debt. You focus on the music, or what passes for it, channeling every ounce of fake widow grief into the strings. Claudia catches your eye and gives the tiniest shake of her head. Don't react. So you don't. By the final verse, half the guests are pretending to wipe away tears, the other half are just drunk. The official, Marcus something other, finally looks away, murmuring to his neighbor. You exhale. Mainstream fact. Roman intelligence networks relied heavily on social gatherings. A well-placed musician or servant could overhear more than a dozen spies. Quirky tidbit. Elite hostesses sometimes hired professional weepers to enhance musical performances. Melodrama sold better than talent. Open debate. Whether Julia Felix was really a business magnate or just a front for Octavian's slush funds. The night drags on in a haze of forced smiles and subtle interrogations. Marcus accidentally bumps into you near the fig platter. Your style is unusual for Neapolis, he muses, swirling his wine. Almost Roman. You clutch your imaginary widowhood like a shield. Grief sounds the same in any tongue, Domin. He almost smiles. How convenient. You're saved by Claudia's deliberately spilled cup. Oh dear, how clumsy of me. Wine soaks Marcus' tunic. He curses. She apologizes with the sincerity of a crocodile. By dawn, you're back at the inn, packing. Calliope tosses you a new identity scroll, Delia of Syracuse, perfume seller, and a vial of Bastit's tears, which smells suspiciously like garum with flowers tossed in. Massilia next, she says. Then maybe Lusitania if he's still sniffing after you. You eye the horizon. Rome is a smudge of smoke and memory now. Some lives end with a bang. Yours just drifts. The salt air curls around you like an old lover, familiar, unforgiving. Somewhere behind, Neapolis shrinks into the haze, its secrets and scandals dissolving like seafoam. Ahead, unknown ports, unknown names, unknown lies to stitch yourself into. But that's the thing about survival, it moves. It doesn't need grand speeches or heroic last stands. Just one more step, then another, until the past blurs and the future softens into something almost like hope. Felix would have hated the sea. Too few mice. You smile, despite everything. The waves whisper. The sails snap. Somewhere, a gull screams like a badly reviewed lyre player. And you,